Ken Roczen on the phone, Daytona winner. Congratulations. Man, JT and I were just talking before the show. I don't know if anybody outside of Cooper Webb wasn't happy for you to win that. You've come close. It is a special race, and you did it so unlike you, Kenny, too. We if we had to write it down, it would be you getting a good start, either hole shotting or passing two guys in the first three corners and taking off with the lead to a big lead. Instead, you got better on lap 4, 5, 6, 7, passed three guys and grinded this thing out. It was unlike some of your other wins, but either way, man, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously a huge night, and I would say that as soon as because honestly, I wasn't all that comfortable all day. Like, I thought the track was, the difference between us racing the track and what we practice on is a difference of day and night. Like, it was so ruddy, but kind of hard packed too, you know what I mean? Like, it was gnarly. And I actually complained about during press day that the rhythms are built and then shaped and then left, I'm like, it takes 2 10-minute sessions, this track's annihilated, you know what I mean? Like, can we pack it in a little bit more? Because it's getting gnarly either way,
Yep.
So, yeah, but no, it was such a huge night. And, yeah, I've just been really also working on myself, trying to have, when I'm in that position, like to charge forward and be kind of a little bit more methodical about it, you know what I mean? Or just hang there for a minute, like, I don't know, just kind of like think it out, if that makes any sense, even though you're acting on the fly. But I've been really trying to stay in it. And, it just was from the heat race on. I feel like heat race was my, I was really in like a flow state. Like, I felt really good and I got a good flow, and I believe that I could do it. But at the same time, I stay really level-headed. Like, I don't ever gain too much confidence or anything like that. So I guess I knew I had to go to work. It just was work,
I love the shot at Brayton, too. Now he can't hold that over you anymore, so I love that on the podium. Because JB was always,
It's like one of the only things he had.
I know. So on a group text, JB was like, do you think I should talk to him about Geneva? Has he ever won Geneva? But funny. I did like that. Your line before the sand, you were on the right side of the track in that rhythm. You jump over the big tunnel, and then you went right to left in the sand, carried speed through there, jump onto the off-camber, rail that thing. I'm sure you were doing it earlier in the day. I saw Chase do it in qualifying. I was like, holy shit. You figured that out really early, and you even probably could have got AP sooner, but you did err on the side of caution. How did that work for you? When you first did it, were you like, oh yeah, like this is good? Or were you something that you were thinking before the main event that could come to fruition, or how did that go?
So if I go back, honestly, a bit of the key moment was Levi telling me after the heat race, he's like, dude, through the whoops, and then, we've been going 2, 3, and over the tunnel all day, and he's like, man, I think the 3-3 and like jumping over the tunnel into that roller is faster right now. And honestly, I trusted that because I could see that, like, being the case. And then in the heat race, I was like, oh, I knew what he meant. I don't know, just the forward momentum, and it set me up so good for the sand. I felt really good in the sand all day anyways. So then I just carried so much. I mean, the faster you go in that deep stuff, the better it is, right? So, yeah, I just carried a lot of momentum there. And then that line to the outside right there really got into play in the heat race, honestly. And I thought it was getting really fun because after I've done it the first time or the second time, I started kind of jumping it, but then ending up in a bit of a wall ride because I jumped pretty far left, so I could start my turn right there and just like really roll through it. So then in the main, I was honestly surprised that nobody really did it but Chase, and then he ended up not doing it anymore. But I just felt like it kept the track so flowy and fun, and yeah, I just felt like your overall speed was so much faster through that whole section, and it was effortless, I felt like.
Yeah. When I was watching it, I was thinking, the line, as you mentioned, you're carrying so much more speed all the way around, and then you're able to double off that and then carry more speed down the next straightaway too. But I was worried that the line where you stepped off would start to go away, like that rut, but no one was going there.
It did.
Yeah,
but no, it did, because it started stepping out on me. When you get that kickback, you're going right, and it just kicks back the other way. But then I ended up like kind of hooking it one time in mid-turn, like a quick hook, and it set me on the bottom of that little bitty berm that we had. So then I made a new line that was more on the inside of it. Like, yes, you couldn't just rail through it anymore, but all it took was a slight adjustment mid-turn, and then you were kind of out of that, and then I started grooving that. And you couldn't be too aggressive because you were essentially starting to turn on the bottom where there's like no berm, at first. So, but yeah, it still flowed a lot better than that inside rut is always so bumpy.
Yeah. And I think so many people quit going out there. You were one of the only people late that was using that line, so the track deteriorated less out there because you were one of the only people out there.
Agreed.
Yeah, Coop tried it. Coop switched it maybe 3/4 of the way through the main, halfway through the main. Coop saw it.
He missed the double off, though,
yeah.
one time, and he's like, I can't do this again.
Yeah.
Like, unless I can do it perfect, I have to stick to the inside because he lost more time than he would have lost going inside.
Yeah, it was interesting to see him do that, where he was like, oh, I guess Kenny, this works for Kenny. Let me try it. And then it's like, no, I don't like it. No, it's a great night. Did you go into the race with a quote-unquote Daytona setup from REP?
No.
Yeah, okay. So I agree. It doesn't work, man.
I did make a fork change. I've been actually meaning to test this. It was a regular Supercross fork, but I was meaning to test this for a couple of weeks. But I don't know. Sometimes when I feel decently in tune, and we've been going to a lot of different dirt. Like I really had to know my bike, and I'm kind of finicky with that. So I didn't test it. I'm like, I'm going to test it when the time is right. So then I guess this weekend, I wasn't really planning on changing anything like internally, but we did. And that helped me a lot, just putting the track together better.
Yeah. Eli was on the show and talking about the vision at Daytona. How bad is it for you? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I actually practiced all week with the roll-offs, and because I was like, you know what, I've been meaning to do this for a long time, because having like 14 tear-offs on for the night show with the lights and the dark dirt, like it's just not good. I hate it. But then I don't know, I just couldn't do the roll-offs. It's just not. I don't know. And I'm from Europe, man. It's like, I dread those things so bad. I don't even know why, but it's just a vision. Like
you look too cool for roll-offs. I'll be honest with you, like your look is too good for roll-offs.
Well, I've heard nothing about vision. Vision is always the problem at Daytona, vision stuff. And then Eli saying that on the broadcast, I was like, yeah, like if you load 14 tear-offs, it gets a little
really bad.
Yeah,
like
so
depth perception, the dirt is as black as it possibly can get.
I didn't even really think about that till Eli said. And when Eli said that, I was like, oh yeah, like roll-offs.
And you can put 14 tear-offs on during the day. You don't have stadium lights in your face. It's still a different vision than once the stadium light hits you from the top. It's just more milky, and like you can see fine with your blank eye, but as soon as you put goggles and tear-offs on, like it does change your vision a little bit. And then when the ruts get really, it's very critical and everything just gets super hammered. So vision is like, I'm very finicky with that.
It's really similar, and Kenny, you're too young for this, but when they had Thunder Valley at night, it was just like the
same thing,
wide open coming down the hills, and you can't tell if it's a bump or a rut. You're just like, here we go. Like I have no idea what I'm about to hit, but I'm wide open anyway. It's not the most fun.
Yeah, I would not think that would be a track that'd be cool to ride in the dark. Or to race in the dark on a moto track is just gnarly anyways.
Yeah. You probably never did Date City at night, Kenny. But Ken Roczen here on the show, brought to you by folks at Renthal, renthal.com, Honda HRC, Monster Energy Kawasaki, Red Bull KTM, Ken Roczen, all using Renthal. Bars, sprockets, and more. Lock-on grips available now, too, as well. I did a podcast with Mark Johnson from REP 6-8 months ago, Kenny, and really smart guy. Obviously worked at WP for a long time, started with his REP and working with the AEO guys, and he's branched out a little bit. And you somehow found him, hooked up with him, and from what I understand, you've been really happy with your bike, and Mark's a smart guy. He's been around a long time. So I hear you're barely touching the thing these days.
Yeah, no, as soon as we talked about it with him, he was on board right away. Obviously, me and Mark, we go way back to when I first was at KTM. And it was really exciting just how the relationship continued. Because for a while there, like, I didn't see him much at all. And, so then that started up. And, from then, like, it was very different at first. And that's why some of the WSX races, like, I just wasn't that comfortable yet, So we had to do some tinkering, but honestly, all the changes we have made were I hardly ever not end up riding it. You know what I mean? And it's more tough now because I feel like I have a pretty solid base. You know what I mean? Now it's either as soon as there's the slightest bit where I think that it doesn't make sense to change because it ruins other areas but fixes one problem area, then I just go back to my base. So
I was thinking about your bike, dude. I mean, Suzuki did change it. They made a big overhaul in whatever year that was, 2012 or something. But I mean,
18 again.
18 again. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You're right, JT. You must know that thing inside and out. You just must know that bike, what it's going to do. You know, it is a little heavy compared to other bikes, some of the other bikes, not all of them. But you just must know what that bike is going to do at all times, right?
Yeah, I don't know, dude. Now I spent, what's this, my third year on it again?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I feel like for the first time, like once I started working on this thing, I really built this bike for me personally from ground up because, you know, we did engine work and a lot of stuff with the clutch and suspension. Like I really just got in tune with it. So like for the first time in a long time, I felt like I'm riding my bike, you know, like it just feels like, yeah, I understand it. You know what I mean? Where before, like at Honda, we were constantly testing. Like I was never really that stoked on the bike. Mm-hmm. You change so much stuff and you get a disconnect, you know, a bit. And I don't feel like, and you know, some races or tracks, it's different than the other, but I'm willing to make it like really work because I do feel like I just get this, you get a relationship with your motorcycle in a sense, you know what I mean? In a way. So yeah, no, I've been really happy. And at this point also, like, yes, my bike's heavier and stuff. Like I don't even remember what it was like riding another bike, you know, or let's call it a more modern bike, you know what I mean? So this is like all I know right now. So
and dude,
I'm having fun with it.
You got factory transmission, taller first and taller second. You're in business. That's got to be so nice.
Yep. Hey, that's just something I really had to learn this year. Like that was it all. That it's not normal. Like in years past, I've never even thought of this until like a couple of years ago or so. That because JB and I were always, and he's like, dude, first gear, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to first gear. I never have in my entire life. So this opened up a bit of a new door, and then it's very not natural for me, but now I find myself using it more and more just because I trust it more. I really have to learn it a little bit because it's very different, right? When you roll on the throttle, like it's just right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think though, like I was talking about on my shows, from all the riders I've ever worked with, they love it.
I would have killed for it.
Yeah.
Oh God, I would have killed for it. Like tight threes out of corners and stuff. You just cram it in first and don't have to worry about it anymore.
See, I always told JP, I'm like, I would rather roll the turn more and keep momentum and not have to do that. Like that's how my brain functions.
Yeah,
like, I do that.
I wish I could have done that, Kenny. I didn't have the talent to do that, so I had to just roll through the corner very slowly and then hold it wide open.
Well, when I didn't know any different, like seriously, I never used first gear, so that's really all I knew. So I like really honed in on that in a sense, you know, and that's why like it was so hard for me to bang that into my head that I can use first gear now, and it's just not natural.
I would guess that Dungey would say the same thing as Kenny here, because he would be like, I don't really need it because their roll speed was so good. Like they could carry second because second would pick up easy with that momentum they had.
There's not too many riders in the history of the sport that's as good in the corners as Kenny.
I certainly was not.
No, definitely not.
So we have to ask this on a scale of like 0 to 911. How worried were you when Coop closes there with a few minutes to go? Because I'm thinking like you can see him for sure, but the crowd, sometimes all you need is the crowd to know if someone's closing or not. Mm-hmm. And I'm like wondering what is going through Kenny's mind in this moment, you know, with 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, I mean, you're always a bit worried, right? But it's what you do with it. Like I honestly, when he caught me, like I know they talked about it on the broadcast too, I lost a couple of seconds, and I remember, and I think it was the section after the start, and that was totally on me. I kind of brain farted, so I popped out of that rut, and I sat into that double as if I was jumping over the single over the tabletop, because you had no more takeoff really to go from into kind of, because they had a knuckle on that tabletop, and you had to go on the backside of it. So I always that was a key point that you wanted to hit every lap, so I always sat into that, right? And I had to kind of pop it over, and I was okay with taking my time a little bit in that instead of trying to push through it standing up and then clipping it 3 out of 5 times. But I brain farted and I freaking throttled it. And last second I'm like, no. And I doubled way too far into the rut of the takeoff right there. And I really botched that rhythm. So I think that's what cost me the most time. So I knew, but I was ready to go to war, like honestly, because I felt good and that was my time to strike, you know, during the night show.
Yeah.
I was ready to go to war.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's Daytona. You're going to have to really get this from my cold, dead hands, Coop, you know?
Well, I mean, there are other times where, you know, like you fought back in Detroit, you know, but there are times where I'm like, I don't know that he has anything left to fight back with. You know, that I've seen that go that way, and this didn't.
You mean on the track, line-wise?
Yeah. Or just like you could see, he gave it everything he had to stay there, and then like the dam finally gave, and you weren't ready to fight back. This didn't look like that.
And sometimes I pick my battles a little bit. You know, like I said, on that weekend, like after the heat race and everything, like I was feeling pretty damn good, and like it's hard, right? Like you gotta be able to, when somebody comes from behind you gotta be able to find a way to go faster without like getting out of control and making too many mistakes, because that becomes the problem. So I inch by inch go a little faster so I don't like overdo it right away, you know what I mean, and then make a costly mistake. So it's just a way you have to figure out how to not stress certain situations, and that's what I've really worked on. And it's constant work. It always is. It just never really stops. And so weekend by weekend, I'm working on that.
You know, it's kind of hidden a little bit, like what Kenny was going to bring to the main because of the way the heats were structured. Mm-hmm. Kenny was clearly the best guy in the heat by a long way, and when you look at the lineup, he should be. But I didn't equate that easy win with what we would see in the main because he was the best guy by a lot. You know what I mean? So we watched this battle in Heat 2, and I'm like, okay, well, Kenny's supposed to win by 5 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever. But I think had the setup or the lineup been different, maybe we'd have been clued in a little bit more to what Kenny kind of had in the tank, because I didn't leave Heat 1 going, wow, Kenny's got it tonight. I was like, oh, this is what he's supposed to do.
And you're not me. I knew that I was going good because I was riding the bike, right? Like I just knew when I was flowing, and then I checked my lap times too to see how far I'm off, and sometimes like what section it would be. And I knew that I was riding really well. So that's when I was like, man, this was actually really fun. That was the key part, actually. I had a lot of fun in the heat race. And then, I found some cool lines, and it put the track together really nicely for me. And that's not a guaranteed win by any means, but at least it's like you can have some, good momentum going into the main.
Yeah, I think like I'm just thinking back on like A1 in 24 and 25. I watched it in the heat, and I'm like, well, if he gets anywhere near the front, he's on the podium. Like, end of story, period. I'm watching the way he's riding. That's happening. When I watched Daytona, I didn't know because, like you had to pass McElrath. And it just was not that type of heat race. It was an easy win, but I would have just been, I think, clued in more. Maybe I should have looked at lap times or whatever. I just remember being like, man, I missed this. I didn't know this was coming.
I was actually stoked to be in the heat race because honestly, like a lot of times I feel like I always get a super stacked one. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was kind of like, okay, once I got to the front and I had a bit of a gap, I was really able to focus actually like what's, lines and be a little bit more like wide-eyed, if that makes sense,
You can
does
look around a little
does it
bit,
make any difference, and I'm guessing not, Kenny, for you, but does it make any difference to be in Heat 1 or Heat 2 as far as how you feel in the
For me, I like being in Heat 1 for some reason.
Yep.
But, I have had really good races, of course, too, when I was at Heat 2. Like, you can't let it bring your mood in a certain way. But when I saw that last lap, I was stoked that I was third. And then Jason went through the finish, and he went in front of me. I ended up being fourth, and I was like, fuck. And then I'm like, oh, no, that puts me in Heat 1. So, I'm good.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things.
Hey, obviously I don't want to talk too much about Tampa and the lappers, and we all rehashed that and everything else. It's unfortunate for you. Brooks was still mad about it after the race to me, Kenny. He was talking about how you'd be in the lead, and Larry was not happy. But I do understand that on another show you called out Starling as maybe being one of the guys to lap that's tough, and I like Starling. He's a good dude. But I heard that, and then I saw him get in the way, not on purpose, but he got in the way in the main when Coop was coming, and I was like, oh, shit, Starling. Oh, no.
It's just you're riding in the middle at all times. For me, that section was a key section because of the way I was doing it, and I felt like how fast I was in the sand. Well, when I cut down, he cut down in the middle too. There's not much track for me to really use. If I have the tiniest slip up, and let's say he's not fully straight, we collide in the air. So it's like, it's more so like get out of the way. Don't just stay in your lane when you're riding in the middle of the track. It doesn't give us that much room to work with.
So I got lapped a lot, and I'm going to tell you how I approach. You tell me if this makes sense for the guy that's doing the lapping. Everybody, okay, if you make a main event, you know how to ride a motorcycle pretty well. Everybody knows where the race line is, where the good line is. So if I'm being lapped, I just take the secondary line. Like it's not that difficult. I know where they want to go. I know where Kenny wants to go, so I'm just not going to be there. And he's going to take the best line, and off he goes. Like, it's not that complicated. It's a little bit more complicated if you're in a battle, fine. But a lot of times you're not. Just take the line that sucks. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
What would you like? And again, I was talking to Larry about it. Like, we have the ability to help you guys with lappers, and it's simply just having some AMA officials with eyes on these guys and saying, look, man, you're getting docked points and or money. You didn't make a good enough attempt to get out of the way. And I think within a month or two, that would get a lot easier for you guys. Do you have any answer for lappers, Kenny, that you'd like to see?
It has to be a bigger deal for those guys, I think, that's ultimately. Because right now, it was always kind of brushed under the rug, but now we're always getting into incidents where that's like, it can really tip somebody's race,
Yep.
And I think, it just needs to, in the end, it needs to be a rule. So they need to be very aware that when the blue flag's out, like, you have to put in an effort to move out of the way,
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have an ability to do that. We just need some more eyes and some more officials. I think it can happen,